Hi everyone, my name's Sadie and I'm a first year postgraduate student at the University of West England in Bristol. And today I'm going to be sharing some findings of my literature review entitled Bridging Voices in the Climate Crisis, the Role of Hope in Young People's Participation. So I'm in the relatively early stages of my project. I'm still in my first year, but I'm exploring youth political participation in the climate crisis and looking at fostering mutual understanding between young people and policymakers. And my research is supported and funded by the Welsh Government and the university as part of a 50-50 partnership PhD scheme. So today I'm going to be presenting the findings from my literature review, which is going to inform my wider PhD project. And I'm going to show that there's a set of prerequisites that need to be addressed for the participation process to empower and instill hope in younger generations. And this includes trust, intergenerational solidarity, and mutual understanding and learning. So just to give you some background on my project, youth participation in decisions that will affect their future is considered a fundamental right under the UN Conventions of the Rights of a Child, which was ratified in 1991. And in 2023, the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child adopted General Comment 26. This recognises the health environment for young people, and it really affirms that their participation in climate decision making is a human right. And it basically considers young people as an essential part of a just and sustainable decision making process. However, young people in the UK are notably disillusioned with traditional political participation, and they say that this primarily stems from, distrust in political systems to address their needs, and also current mechanisms for youth political participation are heavily criticised in literature for kind of overlooking structural inequalities, which often ends up leading to tokenistic exchanges with young people. And this is just contributing to their feelings of hopelessness and distrust, where young people feel they are given a voice, but they're not really taken seriously. And this is prompting the need for more research into meaningful participation processes, and the need for participation actually empowers young people. So this has also sparked research into the role of communication and how this can be used in participatory mechanisms, particularly creative communication methods to bridge generational gaps and empower young people in the decision-making process. However, there really is a lack of research into participatory mechanisms that are evidenced and research informed to ensure quality and accuracy. So it's important to consider young people in the participatory process, because young people are actually considered experts in the reality of growing up in the climate crisis. They endure both its physical and its psychological. However, despite the burden placed upon young people, studies are showing that young people often feel dismissed or silenced by those in power, and this is leading to a passive acceptance in their current situation. And an international survey of 10,000 16 to 25-year-olds revealed that 64% believe that government's not doing enough, and 68% experience anxiety and powerlessness regarding the climate crisis. So despite the kind of clear concern among young people are not engaging in traditional forms of political participation. And the debate of youth abstination from traditional forms of political participation takes two narratives. So you've got the disengaged narrative, which portrays young people as indifferent to politics, characterized by a low level of political knowledge and high levels of apathy. However, a lot of scholars now coming out and saying that they don't believe that young people are disengaged, but rather that they've become apathetic and they're disillusioned with the political system. And this is kind of stemming from the fact that they don't believe that political systems are addressing their inequalities or addressing global phenomena such as the climate crisis, which is impacting their futures. And this has kind of led to young people completely losing trust in the political system that fails to acknowledge their struggles and really give them a voice. So if we want to motivate engagement in traditional political participation, then steps really need to be taken to build trust and instill hope in the political system. And this can be done by placing future generations at the heart of policy making and exploring the factors that can be integrated into participatory mechanisms to really empower young people. So this brought me on to thinking about hope. So an analysis of hope actually found that individuals with greater hope show increased political involvement regarding the climate crisis. So to create change, young people need to believe there's hope, and they also need to feel empowered. And when we look at constructive hope relies on elements of trust. So this includes trust in yourself to be able to make a difference, but also trust in elected leaders to enforce strong climate policies. So essentially, it's the belief that the climate crisis isn't going to resolve itself and that it's only possible through self and collective efficacy. But as I said before, the issue is that young people are consistently reporting a lack of trust in the political system to address the climate crisis. And if trust is needed to foster hope, which is an essential part of youth empowerment, then for the participation process to truly empower young people, it really starts with building trust with them. But to build this trust with young people, it's important to understand their relationship with the political system, but it's also really important to understand their relationship with older generations, because we can broadly frame it in these intergenerational relationships. But intergenerational relationships are often framed, especially in mass media, with this idea of a conflict. So characterizing young people as really caring about the climate crisis and wanting urgency in the way that we address it, whereas older generations are considered to not really care, be quite apathetic towards it. However, there's actually really little empirical evidence to show that there's conflicting attitudes between generations in how we should address the climate crisis and the urgency of it. But the impact of this narrative, this idea of conflict, is just exacerbating trust issues with young people, hopelessness and anxiety. So it's really hindering our collaborative approach to decision making. And this idea kind of highlights the need to increase dialogue between generations and focus on fostering mutual understanding and learning. By promoting an inclusive intergenerational dialogue, we can also start to dissolve these misconceptions and build solidarity, trust, hope, and empower collective action on the climate crisis. So this can start to be achieved if we consider how intergenerational dialogue can be integrated into the participatory process with young people. So literature on youth participation in climate policies highlights youth mistrust and a lack of understanding between young people and decision makers, or young people and older generations, as a key barrier to a meaningful youth participation process. But there's also some key barriers that are consistently highlighted through the literature that need to be addressed in order to facilitate a participation process which builds hope and supports mutual understanding and learning. So firstly, the methods and the mechanisms that are used for youth participation in climate decision making are often considered adult-centric. So they're asking young people to engage in participatory mechanisms that they don't fully understand, and this is hindering their ability to be able to participate effectively. And this is calling for methods and mechanisms used to therefore be simple and adapted to young people. Secondly, that meaningful participation really requires addressing power imbalances between young people and decision makers, and recognizing that there's hierarchies in political systems and academia. So in order for the process to be meaningful, then we need to address these inequalities. And probably the most important is that young people need to be acknowledged as agents of change within society. So their input really needs to be valued as a part of an essential part of formulating this collective response. So the barriers to youth participation underscore the need to reimagine the participatory process and the mechanisms used to restore hope and trust in younger generations by engaging in collaborative discussions between young people and decision makers regarding climate decision making. So building trust really requires creating a space for mutual understanding and learning. And young people bring creativity and diversity to climate challenges. So we can learn from each other, and that's really important. However, the current participatory mechanisms often fail to create these spaces for inclusive dialogue. And the literature has therefore highlighted the need to integrate communication theories into participatory mechanisms that can be used as a means of supporting this mutual understanding and learning and addressing the key barriers to meaningful participation. So through the literature review, I explored the role of dialogue, communication and mutual responsibility in creating these spaces for mutual understanding and learning and solidarity, building trust, and therefore facilitating a more hopeful and empowering process. Mechanisms that are used for youth participation and climate decision-making often don't use any communication models, or if they do, they kind of rely on the information deficit model, which is this one-way flow of communication that engages young people just by giving them scientific knowledge rather than engaging in a collaborative discussion. However, the findings of this literature review really highlighted dialogue communication or two-way communication, which really requires all members of society to be present and engage in these collaborative discussions by valuing all forms of knowledge as equal, so emotional, scientific, political, economic, cultural, but also valuing all individuals as equal as well, and promoting the exchange of perspectives and ideas, and then building climate decisions based on people's actual lived realities, not just the scientific knowledge. And then you've also got mutual responsibility, which is the notion that we're all working towards a common goal, so solving the climate crisis, but we need to acknowledge that we all have different abilities and opportunities available to us to achieve this. So really acknowledging in the way that we communicate with young people that we have a different amount of power and responsibility, and not placing all the responsibility on them as individuals to solve this. So by combining these approaches, we can kind of begin to build a framework for fostering mutual understanding between young people and decision makers. So if participatory mechanisms integrated these notions, it would help build relationships and trust essential for fostering an empowering decision-making process. So implementing dialogue communication actually faces quite a lot of challenges, especially in participatory mechanisms, because there's not a lot of empirical evidence on the best way to do this or the best methods to use. There's still a lot of research happening around this, but we're starting to see a lot of research into the role of creative communication methods as a way of facilitating this dialogue communication. So creative communication can provide a platform for diverse voices and perspectives and address issues of hopelessness, trust, and power dynamics in an engaging way. So looking at methods such as arts-based methods or visual methods, role play, to kind of be used as a tool to facilitate this kind of communication. So a really great example of creative communication methods being used in the participatory realm is this study by Bork in 2024, which explored creative communication pathways between young people and policymakers. So they used photo voice methods and deep mapping exercises, and they got 19 young people to go out and take photographs of local urban planning issues in their community. And then they put on an exhibition using these images and invited 3 local policymakers, and they used these images as a way of engaging in collaborative discussions with them. And the research showed that creative methodologies actually allowed young people to express their concerns more confidently, and it facilitated mutual learning with policymakers, as they noted that they gained new insights into complex problems, and really they've kind of saw how important youth voices were in creating solutions in urban planning policy sections. So this study really highlights how creative methods could be used as a tool to support dialogue communication, showing how creative methods can meet young people where they are and address power imbalances and give them a voice that will actually lead to real policy changes. And this all starts with creating a space for dialogue, which then supports mutual understanding and solidarity. And this in turn builds hope in young people, and then they can feel empowered through the participatory process. So my PhD project is going to be building on this literature review to develop a new participatory mechanism to be used for youth participation in climate policies in Wales. So my study is going to aim to address barriers to youth political participation in climate decision making in Wales by fostering mutual understanding and enhancing communication between young people and policymakers. So I'm aiming to explore the role of hope, creativity and communication in climate decision making and empower young people in Wales through the participatory process. Thank you for listening.